What's going on, family? It's your main man, 100 Grand, Kim Blanks Harrell, and we are having a live webinar coming up on Saturday, May 14th, from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic this month is dividend stocks. Yeah, that's right. We're talking all about dividend stocks. Those stocks that not only give you your cake, but some of that icing too. So make sure you tap in to dividend stocks presented by Stock Market 101, part of the Bullish Institute's Financial Literacy Workshop Series.
Yeah, Mr. Walraven has came to kick back with us. Real estate investor, wholesaler, broker. Serving Southeast Michigan market. For those who may be listening, can you give a brief introduction of yourself and your skill sets?
I've been a real estate agent and a broker since 1999. In my prior life to that, I was a auto mechanic for car dealers in the Detroit area for about 17 years. I hurt my back really bad in 99 or 98 actually. And when I was sitting around trying to recoup to figure out what to do and make six figures a year again, I decided I'll do real estate. One of the biggest things I remember is my father looked at me and said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it anyway," because he just knows, he knew me as I'm just a shop rat kind of guy, right? I'm not a sales guy. Retail real estate is not what I do. It's not what I do today, nor has it ever been what I do. So after I got my license, took the real estate class while I was recouping, got my license in 99 January. I did some somewhat traditional real estate for a little bit with the broker that I had put my license with. He was a REO broker or did foreclosures for banks. He had an account. He wanted me to take over for him for a company called AmeriQuest Mortgage, which those of you who have been around a little while, that goes back. They had a lot of Detroit properties. And in those days, there wasn't a lot of REO. So one broker per kind of area or region wasn't uncommon. So I took that one client, did a great job, cut my teeth on property management in a sense, because that's really what an REO guy did back in those days. We did trash outs, repairs, managed it, knocked on doors to see who was in the house, so on and so forth. And I turned that one account into 3 or 4 low-end type of lenders, what we call B and C paper lenders. And I turned that business into 200-300 listing a month business with a staff of 9 people. And then around 2008 and 9, as the world imploded and turned into an REO world, and even more short sales, because it was so prevalent. The REO market in Michigan dried up. The little bit that was around, they spread that wealth around a little differently because it became more electronic by then, as opposed to doing the broker price opinions and the packages on paper way back in the early 2000s. I transitioned into wholesaling at that point around 2012. By the time I saw the light, turned that into a full high volume business around 2014, 15. I've been running hot and heavy as a wholesaler since then. Our best year ever was 2019. We did 155 deals, local wholesale deals. Made a bunch of money, had staff of 8 or 9. Of course, COVID kind of came onto the scene for my type of business where I'm handing deals to rehabbers. It became a little tougher to get deals, and sellers were scared, and rightly so. And then, of course, as we all know right now, the market's pretty hot. Trying to buy houses at a discount from a seller who thinks he's got the Taj Mahal on the end of the street is a difficult thing to do. Along the way, I've learned how to negotiate, be a good salesperson, be empathetic. I've lost a few personal houses along that way too, to have some personal experience and what it's like to get foreclosed on from the banks, and also just being able to persevere in a lot of ways. So that brings me to today. We're more of a team of 4 now, as opposed to the 8 or 9 we were prior in 2019. And, we still did 89 deals in 2021. They just weren't quite as lucrative as they were in 19 just because of the market. But it's coming around. I like to chase. That's what I like doing. I'm a deal maker. That's my talent.
For those who may not know, can you describe what a wholesaler in real estate does?
Our general operation is to find sellers that have some sort of pain, taxes, mortgage in arrears, death in the family, a rental that's not paying and they just want out, those types of things. We market to those sellers. The term is called a motivated seller. I think it's just a seller with pain that wants to solve it. They call us, we set an appointment, we negotiate with them, and then we have a contract with that seller. A clean, no frills wholesale deal is me selling that contract to a rehab guy or another landlord or whatever for a fee. So much like a real estate agent or a broker makes money on a sale, that's how we do it as wholesalers, is to have a contract, say like at 50,000, we sell it to the rehab guy for 60. That 10,000 in between is how we get paid. The buyer pays that fee to me, not the seller. The seller gets the agreed price on the contract. It all goes through a title company. All the paperwork is square. Deed is transferred properly. There's no handing deeds over for money at Starbucks kind of thing. Everything's on the up and up, and I'm very transparent with the seller in regards to what my process is and what my exit is. I'm one of the few guys in town that will guarantee a close with the seller. So in other words, if I don't find that rehab guy or landlord to buy that contract from me, I will close on the contract price and then exit from there. I'll clean it out, put it on the MLS, or just keep marketing it. So I just kind of redo my marketing, my disposition marketing for that property. So at the end of the day, the seller gets what we've agreed to, whether I'm jumping the contract of somebody else or I'm taking the contract myself and buying the house personally. So that's a easy peasy version of a wholesale deal.
So it's a win-win, or it could be a win-win-win.
Correct. Absolutely.
I like to start at step one. Like, as far as we just get into the meat and potatoes of it. I like starting at step one as a wholesaler. What are some of the things you would need in order to prepare to start wholesaling real estate?
You need to be able to get some data of those stressed out sellers. And there's online, today's world, it's very online. You can get the list of tax, the foreclosures, the bank foreclosures, the people with high equity, which would be like a landlord. You can tell in the public records if a property the tax bill is going somewhere else. That typically means that it's a rental property for that particular individual. So there's resources to find those lists, and then you pull the data based on how you want to market, which you can narrow it down to zip codes within a city, or a county to a city to a zip code. And then some of those processes, you can actually narrow it down to the type of house it is: ranch, colonial, brick frame, basement, not. And you can tell online how long that property has been owned by somebody, what kind of mortgage it has. You can't necessarily see the balance of that mortgage, but you can do the math. If it's a 10-year-old mortgage and it took it out for 100, it's probably at 75-ish. You can do the math that way to kind of get an idea of what the equity might be, to see if that seller might be likely to sell. We do it in multiple ways to touch that particular seller. We do direct marketing. We have Google websites. We have Facebook pages, text to those people. I don't particularly like cold calling, just because I think we all hate cold calling. So it's hard for me to do that like with some kind of integrity. Even texting can be very sometimes invasive. with them. So I like the passive touch where you're just in front of them. If they're interested, they reach out. So if you send them a postcard, or a letter or something that says, "Hey, I'm in the business of buying houses in your neighborhood. Call me if you're looking to sell." Because generally because doesn't everybody get postcards from Wow Cable and all that kind of stuff? So it's not as intrusive as you might think. What I have found is that if there is a pain point there that you're triggering by sending that postcard about their house, they sometimes take offense to that because they're wondering, what do you know? How come you know to send me a postcard about the fact that, because I don't know if I know if their taxes or mortgage or whatever the pain is. I know that internally, but they don't know that when I'm sending them a postcard. That's the easiest way to catch them is direct mail and Googling. Because if you go and Google who buys houses in Michigan cash, will generally show up on the first or second page, depending on that keyword that you keyed in there. And Google AdWords is what they call it, is very expensive. It can be, expensive on how you do that. So you just have to kind of figure out what's working for you. We tend to kind of broadcast things on the Google side. In regards, we're not necessarily targeting our part of Michigan. We just target Michigan. So we do get some scragglers, but the direct mail is very targeted, to Oakland, Macomb, or Wayne County cities. I don't market to Detroit proper. We still get Detroit leads because it just happens, but I don't send direct mail to Detroit addresses. It's not my buyers list. My exit buyers list is not good. It doesn't have a lot of buyer type Detroit buyers inside of it. So I just kind of don't do that.
Something I caught something. You said you have an exit list. So you have a buyer's list and an exit list?
Well, no, that's the same list.
Okay.
The disposition part of what we do is the buyer's list. I have a unique list because I sold close to 3,500 REOs from 99 to 2012. So I have a database of all of those guys that bought houses from me in those years. So that's how I had a head start on the wholesale business when that happened, because I had that quote unquote buyer's list that all the gurus tell you to get, right? My personal opinion is I think you should find sellers first. The buyers will come. If you have good deals, there's buyers everywhere. And especially with our world of Facebook and Twitter and, Instagram and all that, it's not that difficult to put a property out there if you only have one or two, to put it out there to get interest if it's a deal. If it's not a deal, they're going to tell you. They're going to beat you up and tell you that you're paying too much or have the wrong or whatever. So that's some good feedback, though. I think that when that happens, you should accept that feedback and, renegotiate with the seller if that's your position. So I have a list of about 900 bona fide buyers in town, which really isn't that big, but I sell 10, 12 houses a month. I could absolutely sell more if I had more opportunity to the sell side, because it's very difficult to draw those leads in these days because there's a lot of people doing what we do. So they have a lot of choice, right? They have a stack of, if you've got a guy that's owned a house for 20 years, he's 85 years old, his wife just died. That's the perfect avatar, right? Because his family is in play. He probably needs to go into a nursing home anyway. So that's the kind of house that really is our bet, so the buyers I have love those types of houses. And if you buy it at the right price, they'll just take it. There's no issue doing that. But then there's also a stack of cards, because if I can find that data, so can everybody else, right? So they get hit up with multiple inquiries, letters, postcards, texts, if they have a cell phone that actually receives text. And we can tell that too we do what we call skip tracing. Where if I have a name and an address, I can find your cell phone number and your email address based on those two pieces of information. And then we can even tell if the phone number is a cell phone or a landline, because obviously you don't want to text to a landline. So when we get that data back, we sort it out to then text to them, a certain a certain text, right? We all get those texts from, political people, insurance, car insurance or car repair insurance, all that stuff, right? We all get those texts. What I try to do as a transparent type wholesaler is to put my name and my company name in that text, so that there's no, like, because generally it's a generic type text that you get, like you have no clue who it is. It's got a link in there. Why would you click on that link? Why would you do that? I don't do it, and I get those texts multiple times a week. So when we set out my name and my company name, they can Google my company name at that point and see Ron on the front page and see the team of people and see that we're legit. We're not just some looky-loo company trying to buy their house. Sometimes that backfires. They call and their anger is all get out. Like, how did you get my cell phone? Well, it's public record, sir. The worst one is the dad, and I texted his 12-year-old daughter's phone, right? Asking to buy her house or his house or the house, right? Yeah. And so I say to him, well, sir, does that phone belong to you? Yeah. Well, then how do I know it's your daughter's phone if it has your name on the account? So I'm sorry. I'll remove your number from the system. I apologize. Have a great day. So then I diffuse that. And then, of course, the last thing I say to him is, well, do you want to sell the house? Just right? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? He say yes, right? It's like, yeah. So anyway.
Well, okay. Let's tap into you a little bit, because you went from being hands-on on cars to hands-on with people. So for you personally, how difficult was that transition for you to switch career paths after having so much success in one?
Yeah. Well, I think when I first got in the office that I first joined as a agent, you work the floor calls, right? So you take the calls that come in off of their advertising for the office. So part of what that broker did was give me the task of answering the phones, and I would just hand those leads off to, agents in the office in the areas that they were working. So I got a good, test by fire by trying to figure out what that looked like, right? And it worked well. I mean, I think I'm a nice guy. I've learned to not respond negatively to negative responses. Like, it's not personal, especially when we do what we do as wholesalers. So I learned how to just be empathetic at the very beginning and just ask questions, right? Because it's just a matter of asking questions and pulling out the information to see if they're motivated to sell. Now, because for us, that's why I like I like the direct mail and the Google side, because they're reaching to me with some sort of inquiry. So when I call them back, it's not just me, just like out of the blue, I'm just trying to buy their house, right? They have a position or whatever's in whatever curiosity it is, works. And I've taken some sales training for real estate investors. I have a subscription to a guy named John Martinez. That's a one-time fee. It's pretty hefty to get in, but then you have lifetime access to all the training he does, and it teaches you how to read people on the phone, how to listen to what they're telling you. The classic takeaway, like, I'm only buying one house in your neighborhood next week. I want to buy yours. Is yours, kind of thing. Or if you've been following up with them for 6 months, and you say, hey, this is the last time I think I'm going to reach out to you. Are you ready to sell? Kind of thing. And so sometimes that works. Personally, I don't necessarily like that hard sell in a sense, but certainly the takeaway does work. Meaning, like, all of a sudden now you're not interested. Now they're wondering why. So then you talk them through that process. And of course, like I said before, I've been through a couple foreclosures myself on primaries. So I understand what that pain feels like and what it looks like to be able to, for people that are coming after you. All of a sudden now you're the prime target, right? Because you're losing your house. And also dealing with the bank itself. The creditor, the bank isn't very helpful generally. They're better at it in the last 5 or 6 years than they used to be back in the mid 2000s when I was doing lots of REOs. The banks never did forbearances and short sales and any of that kind of stuff back in those days. If you didn't pay, you didn't stay. And they would send that deal to me, the file, after it had gone to the sheriff's sale in Michigan, and I would go knock on the door to see what their intentions were. So you learn how to be safe, number one, knocking on somebody's door who is certainly not looking for the guy from the bank on their porch. And then also to be able to talk them through the empathetic part of that. Like, I get it. I understand. It wasn't your neighbor didn't pay your bill. It was you. So how do we help you? How do I get to the other side for you? And so I've learned just how to listen, right? Part of sales is listening, not necessarily telling. You just need to hear their pain and how to solve it, and then offer up a solution, especially for what we do. How can I pay cash for your house and get you out of underneath your pain point? How do I do that for you? One of the most difficult thing to do, I think, is to get a seller off of their high horse, in a sense, without insulting them. Like, that house is worth 100 if it were totally pretty, and they want 110, and it needs a kitchen, a bathroom, and a furnace, right? How do you do that eloquently and teach them what that looks like, right? So when I go in the door, I'm generally trying to get them to tell me the numbers first, which is the term is anchoring. I let them anchor themselves before I do that. Do I know what the value is? Absolutely. Do I know what those repairs are going to be generally? Absolutely, because I've walked through it. So by the time I'm sitting down with them to talk it through, I already know what the number in my head is generally to get them to get to us in the middle or to my number, and just, I have a complete, what we call a credibility kit that I give to every seller. So it tells them about me, has contracts in it, has a little fridgie for the fridge, and a pen, right? So that I sit down and I leave every seller an offer. I don't walk out the door without leaving them paperwork, no matter what it says, so that they have something tangible and that they can review it, and then their first answer was no, but maybe it's yes 3 weeks from now when the tax man's knocking on the door and there's no way for them to get out from underneath that because they have no money, right? That's usually that pressure after the fact is more effective than me standing in front of them at that point in time. So.
Okay, so it sounds like you solved the problem of people having issues in their homes, wherever the case may be. It could be taxes, it could be repairs, it could be, like I said, death in the family, don't want the house, and or maybe you behind on your mortgage. You offer cash. Is this any of your cash up front?
Generally, no. There's local guys that have money. They have money in IRAs that they saved up through their life, and now they're retired, or they just have cash because they have a pretty decent job but still want that W-2 job. They're what we call private money and not hard money. The difference between private money is just an individual that I'm getting cash from. Hard money is more of an institutional lender that loans money to investors and not homeowners. So that's the huge difference. And of course, the cost of that money is generally more expensive with the hard money guy. So we just build relationships with some of the local guys that we meet. One of the best private lender is grandpa with money. He thinks he likes doing real estate, but he can't do it. So he lives his dream through guys like me. Tactic that a guy taught me 5-6 years ago is go into McDonald's, right? Who sits in the McDonald's? A bunch of old guys in a corner, jabbing her about their life, drinking coffee, right? So you go sit in the booth near them and start talking real estate. Hey, yeah, I got this deal going on, and I'm looking for some cash. Are you available for some cash? Of course, it's a fake phone call, right? And the old guys are sitting behind you, listening to the conversation. And you do that enough, they don't usually contact you first, right? They don't usually turn around and say, hey, I'm interested. They usually see you 2 or 3 times in the same spot, or you just show up, right? Panera Bread is actually a better location for that because McDonald's tends to be, McDonald's is McDonald's, right? But if you go to Panera Bread, it's a little different clientele because there's lots of people that go there and sit, including me. I like to go to Panera Bread's. The Wi-Fi connection's fast. It's generally quiet, and I can sit there for hours and nobody cares. Meaning the waitress, there's no waitress to tell you to leave, any of that kind of stuff, right? So if you have those conversations at Panera next to a group of guys, because a lot of times they'll have, you got the ladies with yarn, they sit there and they yarn all day, or the group of guys, you just kind of notice that and go sit next to them and talk real estate on the phone. It's happened 2 or 3 times to me, and it does work. Now, I tend to network more at the local RIA meetings, the Real Estate Investment Club meetings, for those types of relationships. And then people just generally know who I am because I've done a lot of business over the years, and they come and ask. But I had another guy tell me, like at Starbucks, is like take and buy a Starbucks card, with money on it, and give it to the cashier, and buy the next 10 people their coffee, right? So the cashier says, hey, this guy over there just bought your coffee. So of course they're going to come and thank you, right? Well, here, I'm a real estate investor. You ever thought about selling your house? Like you buy their coffee, it's the end. Or they say, well, I'm an investor like you. And then of course you have another conversation. There's all kinds of ways to network that way without being invasive and just being passive in those ways. And some of my best relationships have been very passive, like just guys who see me online, and then they happen to notice me someplace, and we just have a conversation and talk about it. And I never, ever, ever bring up the money first, right? You got to build that rapport with them, because the average person doesn't want to just give up their cash to anybody. Even if they kind of know you, they're still not going to give up their money to you. So you have to give them some kind of confidence that, when they hand you the cash for a particular transaction, that it's safe, right? And they're going to get their money back. One of the best things you can do as an investor who borrows money from others is to always pay it back no matter what. Always, always. If you lose money on that deal and you got to come to close with $5,000 because it just didn't work, you go to close with that $5,000 and get that private guy paid off. That's what you do. You don't walking away is the kiss of death. That'll get around real fast. Your reputation for that, and then just doing things with integrity and transparency. It's very few and far between that do that consistently, because of course we all know what's on the table, right? The money's on the table. People lie, cheat, and steal for cash in a minute. It's hard to walk away from that cash that's looking at you and staring at you. It's hard to walk away from that properly if you have to.
I like your tactics on how you meet with people. That's very unorthodox. I like that Starbucks play. I might have to steal that one. That's awesome. You're essentially bringing the buyer and the seller together, and then you have a fee there. So you say you put it under contract. Can you break that down in elementary terms? Like, okay, let's say I found the buyer and the seller. Like, okay, I got the money. I got somebody who's motivated. Okay, I know I have to go under contract, but how would I actually do that? What contracts would I need in order to close the deal?
Well, the initial contract is just a typical purchase agreement to purchase the real estate. My contract is 2 simple pages. It delineates the seller, the buyer, the terms, the price, the close date, and any contingencies. It's pretty simple. And then I take that, once that contract's executed, one of the clauses in that contract gives me the ability to market that property and also to assign my interest in that contract. So then when I find the buyer, I take another singular document that is the assignment of interest of that contract to the next guy. So the seller doesn't see the assignment part, the assignment document. So that document then states the assignment fee that is going to be paid to me for the right to the contract. So that end buyer assumes all conditions and contingencies of the original contract. So if we use real numbers for the example, is if I have a contract, a 2-page purchase agreement that's fully executed between a buyer and a seller, that is legal and binding on each for $50,000, I then go find the buyer. I then assign that contract for $50,000 to the next guy for $10,000. So the end number for the buyer is $60,000. Now the assignment doc doesn't say $60,000 because we're negotiating. The buyer and I negotiate the end price. So he doesn't even necessarily know what the fee is up front until he signs that assignment doc, which can be very powerful in regards to what that buyer does when he ultimately sees your fee, right? So let's say I get a great deal on a house for $50,000 and it's worth $100,000 as is. I sell it to him for $100,000. We negotiate the $100,000 price. I send them that assignment doc at $50,000. And so he's seeing what I'm making, meaning the buyer, right? That, to me, that's always the tell for a bona fide real buyer, is they don't say anything about the money that I made. Counting my cash as the wholesaler is not the right thing to do. If you're a rehabber, you could have just as easily negotiated that contract with that seller, but guess what? You didn't. I did. So would you pay? You not knowing what I paid has no relevance to what you will pay. It's if it's a deal to you, it's a deal to you. What difference does it make how much I made? Now sometimes the sellers are more apropos to squawk at that, meaning because you obviously had a conversation with them, but that's really all predicated on your conversation at the beginning and how you set them up for expectations in regards to that number, right? That's why I let the seller tell me the price, meaning the value. Mr. Seller, how much do you think your house is worth? Oh, it's worth $75,000. Okay, well, how much do you think it's going to cost to fix it? To get it to that 75 number. Well, about 25. Okay. So yeah, you can see, Mr. Seller, why I would need to not pay you 75 if I got to put 25 into it, right? You can understand that, right? Yes. Well, and understand that's how I feed my family too, right, sir? Yes. Okay. So if I need to put some money in between there, 75 minus 25 minus my fee equals 40. And they say, well, okay, that makes sense. So when they see that, they're not going to see the fee anyway, but of course they're wondering, they're always going to wonder and look it up. And I'm okay with that. In our case, our title company has 2 separate docs, has a seller side and a buyer side. Neither see each other. So the seller never sees what my fee is anyway, because the buyer's paying it. The challenge I have, more challenge I have is the buyer, the end buyer showing up. That's not me, right? Because they're expecting it to be me. But then that's why I set the expectation at the beginning, like, hey, I may buy your house at this price but here's my true exit is always to wholesale this deal, or is to sell it to a partner. That's the terms I don't use wholesale. I bring partners in to buy houses from me. That's what I do. So I take a fee for that. And I'm kind of like a real estate agent, Mr. Seller. You pay the real estate agent to sell your house, wouldn't you? Yeah. Okay, well, that's essentially what's happening, but the buyer's paying me. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm going to pay all your closing costs too. Oh, really? Yeah, great. So your net's going to be the price minus the water bill minus any recording fees for your family. Other than that, I'm paying the other closing costs, which are generally about 2%. That's kind of how I kind of show the value in what we do, right? And you have to do that. You need to show that added value to that seller for it to go smoothly. And we use title companies, so the contract goes to the title company. They run a search on the title. It's not, there's no hanky panky. We're not doing quick claim deeds. So we're doing warranty deeds, which guarantees that I can sell it to somebody else the next day if I want to. That's very important in regards to what happens at the closing, is that you as the wholesaler and the buyer give clear title to that end buyer. That's very important. I think some of the challenges that a lot of wholesalers that, pick up a deal or two is the closing process is more difficult for them than the actual finding the seller. Blind squirrels find nuts too. And, they go to the bar, they do whatever. Guy's talking about his house. I'm a cash buyer. Really? You buy houses cash? Really? Well, that's, then they show up in their 1982 Cavalier kind of thing, right? Like, you really pay cash for houses? Right. And it goes the opposite way. Don't show up in your 2021 Escalade. Don't do that either. You need to act like you're just trying to feed your family, because that's what you told them. I'm just trying to feed my family. That's all.
You say you have two title companies and they don't see each other. Are these title companies you started with, or are these title companies you've partnered with?
Oh, no, it's just one title company. They just have two separate statements. Okay. They have a seller statement and a buyer statement, right? So in a cash sale, you only need one title company. To explain why you need two with a mortgage is a little higher level than what we're talking about. But when you're paying cash, you only need one title company. And then the title company has, in Michigan anyway, you can have separate seller statement and a separate buyer statement, so that those numbers that the seller's paying and that the buyer's paying are not known to each other. That's all. Generally, in deals I do, the seller is living out of state somewhere. Those docs go to them. They email them out. They meet with a notary. They sign them, and then they overnight them back. So it's a lot of times the seller and my end buyer never see each other generally, because if it's a rehab investor, that guy doesn't go to closings anyway. That's just not what they do. They close at an earlier date, like the day before, or even the same day, just somewhere else, right? And then if the seller lives in Arizona, they're not flying back. They don't have to fly back to Michigan to sign and to sell. We can all do that electronically. So a lot of times when I buy houses, the only time I ever see the seller is the initial contact. A lot of times I don't see them again. And in my case, I have a processor that does those transactions, meaning takes it from contract to close. So most of the time they don't even talk to me after that. They generally talk to my assistant, Jessica, which is sometimes a good thing, because she's a 26, 27-year-old sweet thing that's got a high voice. You would love her if you actually saw her. She's the salt of the earth and all of that stuff. So, and we get multiple BBB reviews for what we do, and I look good because of her at the end of the day for the full transaction. So
it takes a team. It always takes a team.
For sure.
It takes a team. Okay. And I always like to start with the person who's like getting off their couch and saying, "Hey, I listened to the Entrepreneur Kickback, and Ron said this. I think I want to give it a shot." Okay, so you said first, if you want to start, you want to find the data, which you can look in your public records. Next, well, first, let's say that. Let's stick with Michigan. Where are some places we could go to search public records?
There's a couple websites there's one called listsource.org, which is a very consumer-based listing or list, data provider. You can download that list to an Excel spreadsheet to do what you do with it. A more higher level, there's companies that sell those lists. They use a provider called Atom, ATTOM. If you just Google that, I think it's atom.com. Their data pulls are more. It'd be like the difference between you going on an MD site trying to diagnose your cold, or a doctor going someplace to see, okay, well, why is this cold acting like COVID, right? That kind of thing, right? So it's just Adam is just a higher level access to data, but it's harder to read. In other words, it's harder to kind of figure that out. So that's the kind of like the top end, and then the bottom end. They both have obviously fees to pull the data per record. Those are the two main ones. There's another one called successorslist.org, which is the database for probate properties, meaning death in the family that got sold to the family. You can go on to the Oakland County legal news. You can get a subscription online. You can pull data for probates and foreclosures and things like that. That data pull is not quite as easy because you have to kind of handwrite it out, unlike those other ones where they kind of aggregate it into spreadsheets and you can dump it off. The legal news is a little more time intensive to pull that data. And all of those have subscription prices, obviously, to pay for it.
Okay.
And then, okay.
Okay. What else? I'm sorry.
I was just saying from there, kind of sorting that out to get if you're going to mail a list to it, then you have to have some way to sort that data into a mail house that mails those cards. A good consumer-based, it's called propstream.com, where you can pull data and also upload data. And they have like 20 different postcards you can add it to. I've developed my own postcards over the years. Prior partner of mine actually drew a cartoon character of me. And I use that a lot. And I actually use it if you look at my meetup page. That's the little round circle they have of your photo. That's the cartoon character of my face. And it's thinner in that photo, but I use that all the time because it looks like grandpa, right? Don't you want grandpa sending you a postcard to buy your house? Isn't that what you want? Absolutely you do. And it works. Absolutely works.
You said buyers they'll come as the market shows. So you don't want to focus so much on the buyers, but you want to get in the habit of looking for sellers. Or am I getting that mixed up?
Yes. Well, I think that the first thing to do is find sellers, not buyers. Once you get a couple deals and you sell them, the buyers will know who you are at that point. So then obviously when you're marketing your first deal is to save all those people that are interested somewhere, because you can only sell it to one person. And if it's a deal, you're going to get bombarded. If it's a good, and of course the formula to buy a house, the ARV, which is the repaired value, 100% times 0.65 minus the repairs. That's how you do that formula. So if you have a $100,000 house fixed, 0.65 is 65 grand. If it needs 20,000 worth of work, your buy price is 45. I like to use the 0.65 number because that kind of builds in your wholesale fee into it, because you're not going to really, there's no exact science to the ARV side, and there's no exact science to the repairs, right? Because every buyer has a different cost to cure, on that particular repair. Are they HVAC guys? They put it in their own furnace, so on. So there's a variable in there that you don't need to build in your fee. Just build it into the percentage that you're buying at. And generally the rehabbers, there'll be enough room in there for you with that. So that's kind of the quick down and dirty way of getting to that number. So when you're marketing it, let's say you buy the house for 45, just market it out for 55. Don't be greedy. Don't put it at 65, put it at 55, so that you then draw in all those buyers, right? Because they're just gonna swoon over you. If you got a house in Clawson that's worth 150 and you buy that house for 55 and put it on the market for 65, your phone will absolutely blow up 100%. And now you got all your buyers, right, for the next one. And then you go find another one, and then you call all 10 of those guys that blew up your phone, and kind of just build that out, right? So my point to that is build your seller acquisition side before you build your buyer side. It'll happen. The buy side will happen by itself.
Okay, gotcha. So, all right. So we use the data, the find the property, and then we use the deals, the find the other part. Okay, it's sort of like a snowball, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And now you got your snowball here. Now you be ready to close, and then we take that to the title company, and we close the deal.
Correct.
With the title companies. Now, does every title company do this, or do you have to find a particular title company?
For sure, there are many title companies that don't like assignments because their underwriters, the guy that actually approves the title work, because inside of a title company is a lawyer. His lawyer has a person who looks at the search of the records, and this guy tells the lawyer, okay, this is what the conditions need to be met to clear title. Some of them don't like that jump of the contract. They don't like that. So there are probably a handful of them in Detroit that do well at that, especially in the city of Detroit, because Detroit is there's a lot of product coming out of Detroit just because of the nature of the beast. They're cheap houses, or even more expensive ones that, you can buy cheap. So the one that I use is Michigan Investment Title out of Romeo. That's my main title company. The MIT is their short acronym. Erica Weichel is the owner of that company. She specializes in investment type deals like that. I've probably done 500-600 deals with her in 10 years, something like that. And I run all my title through her because sometimes I need some title work to tell me what's going on with it before I can make an offer. She'll do that for me at no cost because we run everything through her. The only time I don't run title through her is if there's something special about it that her underwriter doesn't like. And I can find somebody else that'll actually close it and do what we call insure the title, because that's the point. And so sometimes there's just things that her underwriter doesn't like. But I try not to move deals away from her. I run 100% of my deals through her. And I've known her for 15 years at least. I did some business with her, a company she used to work for, when I was doing foreclosures for the banks. So that's how I met her. And then, of course, the procedure is you take the contract you have, send it to them in an email with all the, kind of handwrite, or just kind of in the terms of the email, you just write out what the terms are. They then take that from there, run a title search in the public record, tell you what conditions need to be met for the seller to transfer title to the buyer. And sometimes that's death certificates. So somebody's passed away because the house is still in mom and dad's name, who are no longer around, and the family's selling it. So you've got all kinds of documentation that needs to be provided to prove the death and to prove the fact that the person that signed the purchase agreement has the right to sell it, what taxes are owed, what any liens, mortgages, city type stuff. They cut the grass for 2 years because nobody was caring about the house and all those kinds of things. And all my contracts always say that the seller pays all back taxes and all current taxes. Me as a buyer never pays the back taxes unless there's enough room in there for me to take that pain away from them. Then I might do that. But generally, I don't pay back taxes and or current year taxes on a contract. Seller pays those fees at the closing.
Actually, it sounds like a lot of fun if you can actually, like you said, you get to chase and you actually get a hold of something. And I'm speaking personally, I've been a salesman in my past life, and you never want to sell things where people, after they buy it, they feel like they got ripped off.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. But so it sounds like your process is, like you say, you find pain, you find motivation, you find, can I get out of my current situation? And on top of that, at the end of the process, you get some money. People are usually happy with money. I want to go ahead and land the plane because I know you're very busy. I wanted to speak about, touch in a little bit about your boot camp and what you're offering.
Yeah, I'm going to be holding a wholesale boot camp on March 19th from 9 to 5. It's going to be at the Knights of Columbus in downtown in Clawson, which is just north. It's halfway between 14 and 15 Mile on Main Street and or Livernois. It's on the corner of Elwood and Livernois. It's going to be a 9 to 5. I'm going to lay out a lot of what I just said here, just more specifically. What I'm trying to do is bring some integrity and some transparency to what we do. A lot of wholesalers run by the seat of the pants. Like I said, blind squirrels get nuts too. And I'm just trying to put some stability to what we do and some integrity to it. I have a meetup page called Michigan Professional Wholesaler Boot Camp. If you go to that meetup page, you can sign up and also pay for it. There is a $150 fee to attend. At that meeting, I will give you a folder of paperwork and contracts that I use, a thumb drive that'll have those contracts on it, so you can just plug it in and stick it on your computer. I'll have some additional information about the lists, like we talked about the lists and things like that, so that they have them, the links to that, so that they can obviously take that home with them. And also just some more swag. I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of, I'm thinking, I'm not thinking like it's a coffee cup or like a, like this, which is like a paper, like an envelope thing, right? I'm not thinking of that kind of swag, but I'm still thinking that through. But it's like on at least have the contracts and then what I want to do is I want them, if they go to the meetup page, it'll give you a link to a podcast series that Jeremy Burgess did, which is somebody that you had interviewed, that has a 7-session way of wholesaling to kind of give some baseline. So that when you show up at my door, I'm building off of that information that's fresh in your mind. So that maybe at the end of the day, the last 2 or 3 hours, we can be more specific about feedback, about what problems do you have in your business? What is a better way to do this? Because this is how I've been doing it, or whatever. I'm just trying to add some more specific value to the guys that show up, so that it kind of builds a database of some bona fide, wholesalers. That's all. And I'm not sure where that'll go from there. Maybe I'll have some more meetups to go with it. I just think there's a real need to educate, the local guys and how we do it, and with somebody who's been there, done that, and bought that T-shirt a million times, and been hurt and been successful and all of that. Just give some relevance to the gurus teach us that wholesaling is like the easiest thing to do, right? And it's not. It might be the cheapest way to get in, because you're not typically a true wholesaler. You're not bringing your own money to the table, but you do have to spend money on marketing, and you do have to spend money on the disposition side, right? There is times you got to spend some money. It's just not on the purchase. And of course, I have a broker's license. I hold licenses for investors. It's very cheap and minimal. I don't provide services like a regular broker, meaning I'm not giving you signs and a desk and a phone and all that other stuff, copy machine. That's not what I do. I'm available for you to call me about deals. That's what I want. I'm not going to train you on how to do contracts. I'm not going to train you on how to market for listings. You can't list with me anyway, because that's just part of what I do or don't do, because that's a lot of litigation that comes from that. If you have a real estate license and you want to hold it somewhere where nobody's going to bug you, I'm your guy. So that boot camp is March 19th, 9 to 5 at the Knights of Columbus in Clawson. It's a $150 fee. When you go to that meetup page, it'll allow you to pay through PayPal. It's an easy way for me to keep track of who's paid. There will be a way to pay at the door. I would prefer that it not be that way, because I'm going to provide lunch too. I'm going to buy everybody lunch so that we don't have to necessarily leave for a half hour to kind of work through that lunch. So I will provide lunch too, for sure.
That's cool. Opportunity alert, everyone. That's an opportunity. Opportunity to invest in yourself. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Walraven, for coming in, kicking back with us. I would like for us to do it again. Is there anything else you would like to let people know how to connect with you? Any websites, any social media?
Yeah, you can. My cell phone is 586-413-6190. I like to communicate by text. So if you text me and say, hey, Ron, got a minute? Tell me. If I obviously don't know you, never met you, then just tell me your name. I'll let you know when I can call you back. Maybe I can do it right then. Maybe it's a couple hours. Texting is the best and easiest way for me to keep track of things. Email tends to get bogged down. But my email address is Ron, R-O-N, at waymarkhomes.com. That's with an S, so it's waymarkhomes.com. And then if you want to go look at our seller-facing site, you can go to waymarkhomes.com, and it'll show you how we draw sellers in and what that looks like. That's not a buyer side. You can't like sign up for a list with that. Now, if you want to get on my list, my buyers list, you can text me your cell phone and your email. Obviously, if you text me, I get your cell phone, but text me your name and your email address. I'll add you to that blast list that we have. But the easiest way to keep track of my inventory is very passive. waymarkinventory.com. So if you want to, all you got to do is refresh that. It's a Google sheet. It's real time. My assistant updates it every day. So waymarkinventory.com. And then one more way, if you're driving around, maybe you're a mail person and you deliver mail and you see the empty houses all day, go to waymarkprop.com, put that address in there. I'll skip trace it, track it down. And if we put a deal together with that, I'll pay you 25% of what I take. Example, if I pull in 10 grand, I'll send you $2,500 just for the address. So I think that's I'm surprised that a lot of people don't take advantage of that, but it's just a matter of me pushing it out there. But waymarkprop.com is a way for you to just simply give me an address. It asks you for your name and your phone number and information about the house that you know. And it's very passive. I skip trace it. I put that deal together. I pay you a referral. I have high-powered software that tracks everything. When it comes into my system, I know that you sent it to me. And then if we put the deal together, I know who to pay out the referrals when I close that deal out. So.
And yet another opportunity. Thank you again, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This is the Entrepreneurial Kickback with Ron Walraven. We are out. Next time on the Entrepreneur Kickback.
Now, there's another website called Fair. You guys write this down, FAIRE.com, fair.com. And I learned about Fair from a couple of the stores out in Asheville, North Carolina. So these independent stores go to Fair and they find wholesale products at Fair.